to be this esteemed panel, and I am the moderator. My name is Puneet Kaura. I am MD and CEO of a aerospace company in India called Samtel Avionics, and I am also part of the CII's missions on environment in India. I'm also the chairman of the Northern Region Pollution Committee of CII, and member of the CII CEO Committee for Environment in India, and I'll talk more about it in a bit. So I will just quickly introduce our esteemed panelists today. We have Dr. Thomas Becker from Germany. He's the head of sustainability and mobility BMW Group. Welcome, Mr. Becker. We have Mr. Prashad. Morning. We have Mr. Guten Morgen, as they say. Mr. Prashad Chavre, country leader, India Business CTT Comes India. Welcome, Mr. Prashad. I think he's there.
Good morning.
Good morning. We got Ms. Jennifer Gress, Chief Sustainable Transportation and Communities Division, California, Air Resource Board.
Good morning.
Good. It's probably late night for you, right? Yeah. Welcome. Good. Nice to see you there. And we've got Mr. Vamsi Krishna Gadam, Joint Managing Director, Dhaka Industries Limited.
Good morning. Morning to all.
Morning, Vamsi. Welcome. So I will set the context about this very important discussion that we're supposed to have today. And as the secretary joins, I will introduce him, and then we can probably have the keynote address from him. As we all know, the subject is of a lot of interest to all of us. It's a very important subject. I think redesigning cities and urban mobility for blue skies, and as part of various forums in the last couple of years, we have discussed this subject in India multiple times, and it's a need of the hour, definitely in our country and all over the world. As you know, in India, the highest number of polluted cities, and it's located in India. So 21 out of 30 cities, the highest polluted cities are in India, unfortunately. Transportation or mobility is an important aspect of city design, and it is estimated to contribute to 1/3 of fine particulate matter of PM 2.5 emissions in India, while its contribution to NOx emissions are positioned at even higher, approximately 40%. Cities need to prioritize rapid deployment of multiple solutions to ensure clean air for all citizens, such as scaling the green and sustainable infrastructure in the cities, strengthening the public transportation system with focus on first mile and last mile connectivity, strengthening the public transportation system, and also usage of cleaner fuels in commercial vehicles, promoting circular business models and spreading public awareness related to sustainable modes and lifestyle changes. Just to little bit talk more about some of these things in more detail. The risk of air pollution is not unfamiliar to any one of us. And the global burden of disease study states that air pollution is the biggest environment risk factor to public health around the world. Not only, but it also affects our business and economy by costing Indian economy, which I can give you a figure by Indian economy, 8.53% of its GDP is affected by pollution due to increased cost of welfare and cost of loss of labor. Another important point is urban transportation. and urban transformations. Being one of the pillars of economic growth has multiple challenges. The CPCB Central Pollution Control Board states that there are 122 urban cities in urban areas in the country which do not meet the national ambient air quality and standards to protect public health, and all major cities fall under this list. As per the International Energy Agency, NOx emissions are primarily related to the transportation sector, which accounts for approximately 40% of the total NOx emissions. Road transportation is the largest source of NOx emissions under this sector, which is primarily from heavy-duty vehicles. The IEA 2020 report states that in India, individual motorization is the growing trend, and passenger vehicle ownership has almost tripled over the last decade, resulting in a strong increase in tailpipe and non-exhaust emissions. Negativity impacting human health. Of the total passenger vehicle kilometers in India, 3/4 are driven in urban areas. India is the world's largest market for scooters and motorcycles, with sales exceeding 19 million units per year. As the benefit of Bharat Stage BS6 motor vehicle and fuel standards will accrue over time, robust mechanisms to address polluting vehicles for on-road emissions and vehicles at their end of life will need major focus and overhauling to make it more effective. COVID-19, which is a pandemic we are all struggling with all over the world, is a crisis, in fact, allowing us a glimpse of what changed world looks like with far fewer cars and much cleaner air, and we all see that every day. Recently, the urban emission study stated that Delhi, where I stay, a city which often has the worst air quality in the world, pollution by PM 2.5 was reduced by 75% as traffic congestion dropped by 59% post-COVID era. The approach on urban planning and development itself needs to be revisited as design of the city and infrastructure is crucial for lowering overall emissions as well as reducing exposure of polluted air. Some of the suggestions to do that, uh, we have to scale up green and clean infrastructure for e-mobility, bio-CNG cycling, walking, green buffers, and other designs and architecture features. Some of the modern cities are already adopted these ways of doing uh, modern ways of architecture design. We also need to design cities to reduce travel distances as much as possible for commuting, shopping, etc. Promote and sustain behavior change among citizens through low emission zones. Promote highly interconnected and reliable multimode public shared transportation. Reliable 24/7 power to commercial facilities and cleaner energy backup and off-grid power and telecom towers. Promote circular business models in waste resource management, example, decentralized bio-CNG from food, organic waste, home community, construction elements from recycled, etc. Policy changes may take long time, but they're building momentum across the world that recognizes car-free streets as a critical way of tackling the urgent air pollution crisis, as well as strategy to improve health and well-being. I think we are uh, Mr. Durga Prasad, Honorable Secretary, Minister of Housing and Urban Affairs, has joined us. I want to welcome you, sir, to this session this morning.
So am I audible? Is it okay? Is my voice
Yes,
okay?
sir. Yes, sir. You're very much audible, and thank you for joining us this morning, sir. Sir, I would like to, on the behalf of the team panel, now request you to give the keynote address for our session this morning, sir. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for a very good morning to all the participants and those who are going to be panelists working in the different panels of the today's conference on the sustainability summit. First, on the outset, I would like to thank CII for organizing such an important workshop through the virtual platform. This is addressing the issue of redesigning cities and the urban mobility for the blue skies. When the whole world is under the grip of COVID-19 pandemic, this platform has become so useful and we see such a blue sky. The air quality index of our cities have not been better than this. In fact, in Delhi, our air quality index has gone down to something like 40 to 50. That was never there. I have been living in Delhi for many years and such a kind of thing has never reached. This has also shown, I mean, why was that? Because the people's travel on the roads, various other activities has gone down. I mean, they've just gone down, but that is not what is expected. I mean, once the life comes to the normal, people will have to travel. All the works which are going on, they will have to go on, whether it is the construction work, whether it is the works in the factories, all these things, all these activities needs to go. But yet we all love blue sky, we all love blue water of the rivers. So what is that which we can do? We need to learn from the COVID-19 experiences in the last 3-4 months. And for that, what is most important is to go for such kind of sustainable solutions for the transport, because that's a very basic need of our people. People need to commute from one place to another. People need to go for the work, go for the business, go for various activities. So this can be addressed to two ways. One, how we can require traveling on the roads. And that's another big learning during the COVID-19. I mean, work from home. We have heard in the private sector, but even the government, large number of persons are working from home. In my office, maybe around 60 to 70% of people are still working from home. And we are able to cope up with all the requirements. So this is going to be the new normal. I mean, there is a debate. Why should various organizations should have such large offices? You can also manage. Part of the people can work from home, and part of the people can work from offices. We can also manage organizing. I mean, if the same workshop, if the CII was organizing, you would have organized in one of the hotels or maybe in one of our places in Habitat Center or India International Center, etc. Do we need to organize this kind of workshop which requires people traveling from different places, or we can do it? I mean, there are certain things which can be done only when you are face to face, but most of it we can do through this kind of a platform. Use of this kind of platform was never there so much there. Third is our own requirements. I mean, our own requirements for consumption. Now, e-commerce, the way it has become so much popular in the last 3-4 months, it was not there. I mean, all these things, IT platform, and the most important, do you think that such a thing was possible 5-6 years back? The kind of digital transformation this country has undergone in the last 5-6 years, the kind of infrastructure it has improved, this has led to so much of reduction in the travel, and people have started asking questions whether we need to travel so much. So one approach is this, that how we can use the technology in such a manner that our requirement of traveling itself can go down. The second approach is go through the transit oriented development. That is another place we have developed the national policy on the transit oriented development. We are pushing it in a big way in Delhi, in all our big cities. How we can do the new kind of development, the new urban planning, whether it is through the redevelopment or it is through the green development, whether it is in the brown area or in the green area, what kind of development our control norms could be there, so that we incentivize people to go high. I mean, rather than constructing 1-story, 2-story, 3-story building, they can go higher up. You use the FAR, create more and more green spaces, create more and more open spaces, and that will improve the quality of life and get a mixed kind of planning where I mean, not only the residential, but office, your office requirement, maybe your commercial business requirement, various things can be met, which are all good for for the climate, which is where you don't have to travel a lot. Only for some requirements where you have to travel to the central district, then you can take a mass rapid transport like metro or such other transport, BRTS. You can travel to such places. Otherwise, most of your requirements are close to your home. So you either cover through the walking on the roads, or using the cycle, or using such other modes which are non-polluting. So this is another area, this transit-oriented development, that could be the future of the cities, and we are, I mean, through a policy measure, we are taking a lot of action on that. The third area is, that is your mass rapid transport, to connect the major places through a mass rapid transport. This is like you see the metro development. In 2014, we hardly had 200 kilometers of metro under operation. Today, we have got nearly 700 kilometers of metro under operation in 18 cities. We have another 900 kilometers of metros which are, under construction, and they are in advance. Say next 5 to 6 years, we'll have around 15 to 1600 kilometers of metros. And we are also going to have the regional rapid transport. I mean, another 2 to 3 years, we'll have this Delhi metro transport. Part of it is going to be made operational. And once the Delhi metro, Delhi Meerut, this regional rapid transport is open, then you cover the 16 smaller cities from Delhi to Meerut just in less than 60 minutes. So there is no need of people to live in Delhi. They can live in a periphery, and from there they can take the regional rapid transport, come to the city, do their work, and go back. And this is the story in most bigger cities. Whether you take Tokyo, you take London, you take various other cities, New York. I mean, everywhere you have this kind of a regional rapid transport. So this is going to be there. But on a metro front, I mean, since this is very costly proposition, it's a very cost-intensive infrastructure, and we cannot afford, if you want to go for a large scale upgradation of the metros across the, not only the tier 1 cities, the big cities, but also in the tier 2 cities or in the outer areas of the tier 1 cities. We need to cut down on the cost so that we are able to meet our requirements, and at the same time, we need to cut down on the cost. Provide people convenient, timely, and a very comfortable travel. And for that, we have gone for the metro light. Metro light costs something like, say, 40% of the metro, and provides you the similar kind of a comfort. And we are now very soon coming up with the metro new, the new specification, which is tired metro, and that will cost around 20 to 25% of the normal metro cost. And that is going to be revolutionary. That will, I mean, right now our cities are mostly larger cities. Now we can go to the next level of cities with a population of 1 million or maybe 600, 700,000, and then we can provide this. And that added to a good bus transport system, added to mobility system, that will provide a better quality of transit within the cities. So this is another area which needs to give it a focus. BRTS is another area. I mean, bus rapid transport, though it didn't click well in Delhi, but it is doing well in many, some 11 cities right now. Some more than 300 kilometers of BRTS is under operation in the country. Whether it is Indore, Bhopal, Ahmedabad, Amritsar, many cities, this is working. And this is, I mean, we have taken experiences from world over. So this is another area which is which can provide a, I mean, low cost solution for a rapid transit, hindered traffic from one place to another place. So this provides a good experience to the people. We are laying, I mean, this is a non-motorized transport. I mean, this is one area where the ministry issued during the pandemic. We had a consultation from the, I mean, global experts, local experts, to the various bodies during the, I mean, the lockdown period. We had detailed on what people are doing in different parts of the world. We issued guidelines on two things. One is to promote the non-motorized transport, and recently you must have heard of this is we have launched a challenge. The challenge is cities for a cycle for the cities. The cycle for city challenge, we have requested all our smart cities, the cities whose population is more than 500,000, So they should participate in this challenge process. They come out with a design and how they are going to fund this kind of project. We are also going to give them awards so that there's an incentive to them. And once you make a plan, once you start thinking on this line, once you think that the cycle is going to be, cycle is not only in a sport, or cycle is not only a poor man's vehicle, but cycle is for everybody. I mean, you go to the many European countries and people are the CEOs of the companies are driving cycle to their offices, and cycle is so good. In the days of pandemic, I mean, when you have to maintain the social distance, automatically the social distance is maintained once you are doing the cycling. It also improves your, it's good for your health. It is good for the quality of air. I mean, when in city like Delhi, when you go for a AQI which is more than 300, which is very dangerous for the health, the cycle provides you a very good mode of transport. In fact, Delhi, we have sanctioned from the ministry some 35 kilometers of the cycle track, which DDA is constructing. They started commencing the work on that, and we think the whole city of Delhi or a city of Bombay or big cities, they can be, I mean, connected to the cycle, and that will provide a good quality riding, good quality riding for the people. In fact, during the smart city, in 100 cities, you will find that the bicycle sharing, that has become a new thing. The large number of the bicycle sharing is operating in the various cities, and that people are using, especially the young lot, they are using it for different purposes. This pedestrian pathways, we are again coming with a new challenge. We are still in the process of that, so that we promote the pedestrian pathways. I mean, the pathways are there, but people do not take those pathways because this is risky. This is they do not get the good quality walking experience. So we need to have this kind of a good experience. You have to need promote the walking I mean, pedestrian pathways in a manner so that it is conducive for people to take that. I mean, anybody would like to walk a kilometer and go to the next place rather than take some other mode of transport which is going to pollute the city. So when you talk of the blue sky, there are plenty of things, plenty of measures with the government is taking. In fact, here I think we have a sustainable urban transport project. Through this, in the various cities, we have come out with some models. Through our smart cities, we have come out with the various models, and they need to be replicated. They need to be expanded and at a bigger scale, especially in cities whose population is more than 500,000. Because these are the cities at, I mean, this is the stage where if you don't intervene, if you don't enter into this domain, they are going to cause problem, and the congestion on the road, accidents on the road, I mean, the poor quality of life because of the poor air quality index. I mean, all these things are going to cause damage to the people's quality of life, whereas our focus is on the improving the quality of life. In fact, we must have definitely heard of the ease of living index. And ease of living index, the transport is one important component. I mean, through the competition, the last ease of living index we issued in the year 2019, and the next one is in the process. So this, if you see that, you'll find that transport, energy consumption, and all these things are very important. The cities are so important. Cities generate the GDP. Around 65% of the GDP comes from there. But cities also are causes for pollution. They're also consuming a lot of energy. So we need to change our way. I think the pandemic has shown us the path. If we learn from here and move to a new direction, new to the we take such action which will be for improving the quality of life, improving, I mean, reducing all chances of accidents or diseases which are caused because of poor travel on the roads. So that will be a very important gain from pandemic. I would like to thank CII for organizing this Workshop Sustainability Summit. In fact, I look forward to all the good ideas which are coming out of this workshop. Kindly share with the ministry. We do use it as a part of the policy discussion. Maybe at some point of time, we can take what is that which needs to be done so that to push this sustainable urban transport in the cities and providing ease of living to the citizens, providing a better quality of life to citizens, that is induced, that is promoted through our sustainable transport. I wish you all the very best for this day's deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for this very informative and useful and clear messages this morning. This will definitely help us in our discussions for this redesigning and urban mobility for Blue Skies. I would like to thank you once again, sir, for your time this morning. I would like to now move ahead and I would like to invite our first speaker to give his inputs, Dr. Thomas Becker. I would like to invite Dr. Thomas Becker, who's Head of Sustainability and Mobility at the BMW Group in Germany. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. And may I, Secretary Mr. Kaura, also on behalf of my colleagues of BMW India, but also of BMW in general, thank you very much for the invitation to be part of today's event and share some of our perceptions, our views, and namely what we do in terms of sustainable mobility, and then maybe discuss a few of those issues. So let me share some slides. Right, here we are. So when we talk about sustainable mobility from the point of view of a car manufacturer, it is today more than ever facing an unprecedented change in the framework conditions, the expectations of society under which we operate. So as many of you are aware, we are not only seeing urbanization change our business with an ever increasing part of our customer base living in cities, around cities, and their lives being defined by what happens in cities. It is also a huge change in our regulatory environment, which affects our business. This ranges from import regimes to regulating the requirements our vehicles have to meet. And obviously, climate change is the dominant factor that is transforming our industry. And I will talk about that in a moment, what we do in terms of changing this. But also, the culture of mobility is changing in very many markets, and digitization is creating new opportunities for us to interact with our customers, but also for the car to interact with its environment. I hope you can properly see the presentation, which that's okay?
Yes, we can see it.
But first of all, what is it that we as a company have to do ourselves? We have adopted a new strategy for the years 2020 to 2030, which foresees a significant further reduction in our CO2 footprint. And we look at this in a comprehensive manner. We look obviously at our products and the reduction of the CO2 footprint of all the vehicles produced by BMW globally by another 40% from compared to last year until 2030. We want to be, and we are taking all the measures necessary to make our own production completely CO2 neutral. That means reducing emissions by another 80% in the next 10 years, and where technical options are not available to avoid emissions, we will compensate them. And thirdly, we will reduce the emissions of our supply chain significantly by 20%, which looks less than the rest, but I will show you in a moment that this is really turning around the current development. So to start with, if you look here at, for example, the fleet that we sell in the European Union, we will be down another 20% this year compared to last year. And this is not due to the COVID crisis. This is due to the steep ramp up of additional offerings of electric and plug-in hybrid cars, by which we will at least meet the fleet average target that has been set by the European Union. We will presumably overperform even in this regard, and we take similar measures in very many other markets in which we operate. Clearly, these steps of reduction are due to electrifying cars. This has another side to the equation, and this is the footprint within our supply chain. So if you look at last year, the average car that we made had a footprint of 10 tons of CO2 before it reached the customers. So if you add all the energy that went into making steel, plastics, aluminum, the entire logistics chain, this added up to these 10 tons of CO2. So with electrification, this number would go up in the absence of countermeasures to 14 tons, because the electric footprint of the energy footprint, of the electric drivetrain is considerably bigger than of a conventional one. So we need to do a lot in order to turn this around, and it is our target to end up with 8 tons of CO2 per vehicle. And clearly this is about working in partnership with our suppliers to, for example, produce all the electric components, namely the battery of electric cars, only with renewable energies. This is an obligation which all our battery suppliers have been taking on board this year in order to make sure that the overall footprint in terms of the Paris Agreement of what we offer is as good as possible. Looking at the technology mix, very clearly in general, we expect gradually over the next years, battery electric vehicle to take an increasing share of our sales. At the same time, the pure combustion engines will go down. We also see, depending on infrastructure, opportunity for fuel cell electric vehicles, and namely in the time where we don't have the infrastructure density for fully electric driving, we think that plug-in hybrids will play a significant role. But let me make that very clear. This picture will look different in each and every market. It is the framework conditions. For example, when it comes to charging infrastructure, but also when it comes to taxes and incentives, which define the picture in the different markets. And even in the European Union, we have a hugely different situation between, let's say, Bulgaria and Norway. So here we can, on the supply side, make a compelling offering with good products, but whether customers actually purchase them is to a large extent dependent on local conditions. And this namely applies to the mix between pure electric driving and plug-in hybrids. So plug-in hybrids have the advantage to not only depend on electric charging. You can use them for long distance travel and at the same time do your daily commute emission-free and with the electric drivetrain. So we think that namely for households which don't have multiple cars, but who depend on just one vehicle that can meet every requirement, plug-in hybrids can play a good role, namely in what we see the world over is the dominant travel mode that our customers have. And this is commuting. So if you look at this picture, which is now here for our 3 biggest markets, you see that only a small minority of the people who drive a car live really in the absolute urban center, in the super urban areas. Predominantly, people live in urban and suburban environments. So it's the 5, the 10, the 20, the 30 kilometers of traveling back and forth from home to the job, which defines the mobility pattern of the vast majority of people. And namely for these, who also would like to go on holidays with their car, for example, plug-in hybrids are a good offer, namely as long as you cannot rely on infrastructure being wherever you would need it. So with this in mind, we have been seeking for ways to ensure that the plug-in hybrids we offer are used in the best possible way. Because very clearly, if you only drive them with a combustion engine, they will not deliver on decarbonizing effectively transport. So how can you do that? this is an example that we undertook together with the city of Rotterdam. We have defined a zone in the city. As soon as you enter it, the car goes into the fully electric mode. That means that, namely, where the pressure on air quality is highest, meaning in the very city center, we make sure that these vehicles actually drive electrically or in an automatic mode. So we have now rolled this approach out in 80 other cities in Europe. And we think that this example also demonstrates that modern technology, that digital communication enables you to really make road transport more sustainable. Now, in closing, obviously, BMW is only a relatively small player in the Indian automotive market. But very clearly, we appreciate any initiative of collaboration, as you alluded to, Secretary, in the beginning, to work with the various players at state, at country, and namely also at municipal level to create the conditions for effectively bringing down the carbon footprint of the travel of our customers. So with that, I thank you very much again for the opportunity to share these impressions, and thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas, for this useful information and from auto car maker size of BMW, looking at different things. We will move on to the next speaker as we are short of time, and we will probably do Q&A right at the end, depending on the time we've left with. So without further ado, we just move on to Mr. Prashad Chavre. He's the country leader, India Business CTT Commons India. Mr. Prashad, I'll 5 to 6 minutes. As now we have positivity of time as well. So over to you, sir. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Puneet, and good morning to all my fellow panelists. In terms of what my organization is doing in terms of the sustainability roadmap till 2050, we have shared the notes separately, and you can go through in your leisure time. In this presentation, I'm going to more talk about how do we redesign these cities and mobility in terms of Indian context. And first, to start with, sustainability. And as you could see from this picture, pictorially depicted, that it just means that a lower number of vehicles, active vehicles on the road. And just to put a thumb rule that any pass car occupies approximately 3 times of footprint by length, and an urban duty cycle scenario could consume around 1.5 times the fuel for an equivalent seat kilometer travel compared to a 12-meter bus. And that is the importance that I want to point out in terms of public transportation. Now, in order for us to move, I believe that we need to understand the key drivers. Some of that Mr. Puneet touched base earlier, but the share of public transport is actually going down, and the bus sales for the last 25 years has been flat. And if you look at the share of two-wheelers and four-wheelers, especially the two-wheeler sales, especially in Indian context, have grown phenomenally. And the result is that there are congestion on the roads, air pollution is increasing, and as Mr. Puneet talked about, most polluted cities are in India. However, there are technologies which are available in terms of automation, new energy, shared and integrated. And with respect to government's role, I think government is just now, we as a country moved from BS4 to BS6, and there is a good roadmap which is available in terms of BS6 OBDC as well as the HDFE norms and the National Communication Policy 2022 that talks about how do we penetrate the internet across India. And as well as increase the share of digitalization in the overall GDP by following the framework of mobility by Niti Aayog with the mission of smart city covering 15 cities. And there are key trends, as our Honorable Secretary talked about. There is an e-commerce penetration, and the people preferences are changing over the period of time. The another thing that I just want to talk about, that the crude oil prices, as all of you know, India is a net importer, and any increase at say $10 per barrel, which increases about 0.1% in terms of the inflation. So what we really need to do now, according to me, is that we need to have a sustainable strategic collaboration between energy, in automotive, and the infrastructure sectors, and an opportunity for us to move towards our mission of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Here are the key solutions that I just would like to talk about. The solution of scaling up suitable infrastructure, use of connected technologies, and using the cleaner technologies collectively drive seamless use of public transport. If you see the rate of change of public transport or the urbanization are faster than the rate of change in infrastructure growth. So we do have a lot of cleaner technologies available with us. However, the pragmatic implementation to make a business case for the sustainability will require a collaborative approach between government, industry associations, and the corporates. Like a few years ago, we were not using a banking facility. And now we use it so much so that it has become an ingredient part of our day-to-day life. When it comes to public transportation, do we have that substitute, or can we make that public transport in the same way, start using it in terms of what we use in terms of net banking? So we need to have first basic things sorted out, the routes and stops, and the most important thing that, following the traffic rules. So these are some of the basic things that I'm just going to talk about. And then I'm going to talk about how do we move to hub and spoke model. So based on the data of people movement, we must redesign hubs and spoke and offer a supporting infrastructure for the first mile and the last mile connectivity. And here, a wider collaboration is required amongst corporates to reduce the stress on the roads by collaborating with each other. So there are corporates who have similar kind of buses, dedicated buses. Is there an opportunity we can collaborate together and start moving our own people, all of our people, to the location? And that means we must have a bouquet of public transport, like we can see over here, from smaller, medium, larger, and to the largest. So that kind of things that we require, and that will also suit to the weather conditions which are there prevailing in India that Mr. Mishra talked about. So the strong, stable, and secure penetration of digital connectivity with 5G element will lay the foundation for connected solutions like vehicles talking to each other, as well as real-time diagnosis. And as we move further, the technologies like battery and hydrogen, which are also going to be available for us. And over the period of time, the sustainability and the economic business case will make sense for us to move ahead. I'm also going to talk about the intra-city network. We have Mumbai, Pune, Nashik, we have Hyderabad, Vijayawada, we have Delhi, Agra, Jaipur, and all these cities can be a combination of one large city. However, in recent times, in the pandemic times, we have realized that we can work from home, and we can work from home as effectively as we can while working from the office. So if we start moving to that kind of norm by the corporates, that those site critical roles will come only to the sites, and all the other roles can move and work from the home. That will help us to reduce the stress on this on the roads. Moving to within city transportation, I'm recommending that we move to the large vestibule buses, BRTS lanes with the battery swap model, special bay for charging. It can also charge the batteries while solar panels at the top, and carrying e-cycles on the platform at the rear of the bus. Other fuel can also be hydrogen. And the passengers will also be able to track location through mobile app. Users can make informed decisions for optimum path based on real-time information, wait time, and as well as the journey time and the dynamic cycles. So the key enablers are solar and wind power share, which we have seen increasing from 2% to 18%, and the battery recycling and disposal is one of the challenge. But another revenue stream that we could find as a country is a second life battery. The high energy content of lithium batteries may allow their use in various electric grid applications, creating new revenue streams for the manufacturer. So the payback for the entire model can be attractive with additional revenue streams and incentives to the corporates as well as to the customers as we move forward. And as I said, the role of government and citizens are critical. Government can create an environment where private sector can participate actively, and the corporates can move from selling products to selling services, as Dr. Baker pointed out, and actively engage with other stakeholders to create coalition and strategic partnership. In conclusion, what I'm talking about is the cleaner technologies for transportation and the necessary infrastructure coupled with digitalization, IoT-based connected technologies, data analytics, combined have a greater potential to improve the efficiency of transportation ecosystem and reduce air pollution, considering the positive benefit that we have got from the pandemic in terms of work from home. So with this, I would like to thank Puneet and transfer my ball to the next panelist.
Thank you, Mr. Prashad, for these insightful comments. I'm sure this will be very useful for all the viewers and all the people on the panel. I would like to now move to our next panelist, Ms. Jennifer Gress. She's a Chief Sustainable Transportation. She's a Chief Sustainable Transportation and Community Division, California, on a resource board. On to you, Jennifer. You'll have 5 minutes as we are having only 15 minutes left in total. Thank you.
Great. Good morning. I believe Kansha was going to share my presentation. Thank you. All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to talk about land use and transportation planning, and specifically California's Sustainable Communities and Climate Protection Program, which is also referred to as SB 375 after the legislation that created it. I'll start with some background information on how the program works, and then I'll move to trends we've seen since the program was created, and then some lessons learned. So let me start by saying that land use planning is the responsibility of local governments, cities and counties. Transportation planning, by contrast, has been the purview of regional agencies, with local agencies doing some transportation planning within their jurisdiction. SB 375 was signed into law in 2008 with the goal of integrating land use planning with regional transportation planning in order to reduce vehicle miles traveled from passenger transportation and help meet the state's greenhouse gas reduction goals. Under the program, my agency, the California Air Resources Board, sets greenhouse gas reduction targets for 2020 and 2035 that each of California's 18 metropolitan organizations, or NPOs, must meet. NPOs are regional planning bodies, and they must demonstrate how they will achieve the targets by developing what are called Sustainable Community Strategies, or SCSs. These SCSs identify various strategies and investments to reduce emissions from passenger cars and trucks. So examples of some strategies an MPO might include in its SCS are investment in transit or bike share, van pooling, increased infill development, higher density housing, or improving the jobs housing balance. My agency then evaluates whether SCSs would meet the targets when they are fully implemented. Over a decade has passed since the adoption of SB 375, and the question is, have these planning and investment efforts been enough to move the dial on greenhouse gas emissions? What progress has been made on the ground? So we conducted a study to evaluate these questions, and here is what we found. If you can back up on the slides, please. Okay, right here. So as it turns out, transportation emissions are going up, and this is despite increases in the fuel efficiency of vehicles. And this chart shows that to achieve SB 375's 2035 greenhouse gas reduction goal, we need to reduce VMT by approximately 25% from 2005 levels, as shown by the rightmost green dot. This is the equivalent of reducing 4.7 miles per person from what people are currently averaging per day. However, the trends in CO2 per capita emissions and VMT are up through 2016, as shown by the orange and blue lines respectively. So it's not just that we're not on track, we are moving in the wrong direction. So what's going on here? To better understand what is driving the rise in VMT, we looked at almost 24 indicators, and I'm going to show you a few of those results here. Next slide, please. So this graph shows the percentage of people who drive alone to work for the state's 4 largest regions. And as you can see, 3 out of 4 people drive alone, and this trend is flat or rising in most regions. The Bay Area, which is home to San Francisco, is unique with a shrinking share of commuters driving alone to work. Next slide. Let's look at funding. So RTPs, regional transportation plans, include over $1 trillion in planned spending over 2 to 3 decades. In California's 4 largest regions, the proportion of overall transportation spending planned by mode has remained nearly the same since the enactment of SB 375 over a decade ago. And as you can see in this chart, roads are the largest category for planned expenditures. So it's not surprising then that the portion of people driving alone to work rose or stayed the same in most regions. Next slide. This chart shows annual transit trends. Transit service per person, which is on the left, has only barely recovered from the recession of 2008. And as of 2014, transit ridership, shown on the right, is falling. And so is carpooling to work. Next slide. For housing, the data show that housing construction and permitting are significantly behind needs. Jobs housing imbalances are increasing in many regions, and housing cost burdens have increased statewide, as shown in this graph. Housing cost burden is not only increasing, it is expanding across more income groups and impacting more households. And the lack of affordable housing is a problem for the climate and public health. As people move farther away from their jobs in order to find housing they can afford, they drive more and emissions go up. Next slide. Okay, so what is happening and what can we do? So by and large, sustainable community strategies are not being fully implemented. And why is that? As we conducted the evaluation, we consistently heard concerns about the misalignment between the factors that shape growth and development and the state's environmental, economic, and housing goals. So we don't conclude that there's any one factor or entity solely to blame. Rather, there are a number of common issues that converge to create these outcomes. So the first, as I mentioned earlier, is the lack of affordable housing. And California's governor has made housing a priority, and we have been working with the housing department to create incentives for location-efficient housing. Second, regional transportation plans are long-range plans that have projects that have been on their list for 2 decades, reflecting thinking that is sort of out of step with today's planning. But those projects have political support, and regional bodies feel committed to seeing those projects through. Misalignments. There is a misalignment between the state's funding programs and SCS objectives. Funding programs do not assess or prioritize projects that reduce VMT. And there's also a misalignment between regional plans and local priorities. Local land use actions and priorities often do not take into account the regional plan. Similarly, most regional transportation agencies do not even think of themselves as land use planners. So while they may work with their local agencies to incorporate current planning assumptions, they may not engage in a way to try and influence local action. And finally, there is a system of governance, funding, practice, and of course, politics, and it simply takes time and patience to see change through. For us at CARB, we are very focused on creating better alignment across state funding programs to support SCS implementation. And we're also thinking about incentives to better align local and regional plans. If we can make progress on better aligning priorities across state, regional, and local governments, agencies will start to do things differently, and slowly the system will shift and the politics will follow. In addition to aligning policies across government, the keys to success include strong leadership, funding, and patience. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. useful messages. I would, without wasting any time, move on to our last speaker of the panel, Mr. Vamsi Krishna, Joint Managing Director at Visakha Industries Limited. Mr. Vamsi, you only have 5 minutes or less because we supposed to end at 11:30. So please, on to you. Thank you. You are on mute, sir. Mr. Vamsi. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Hello?
You are, but it's not very loud. You need to be louder.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so very quickly, I would just like to run you through the global warming issues, of course, like the previous speakers have talked about in terms of the emissions that we are facing, and of course, the negative impact on the environment. And of course, we've seen the tremendous, disasters that have been happening over the years. Of course, the energy demand in India particularly has been ever so rising, and the carbon emissions with that, of course, have been rising. Just to give you a very quick number, the per capita emissions that we are at today is almost about 3 metric tons, which is still way behind if you compare against the United States or China. But because of the population that we have, and the contribution of the carbon emissions and the resources that we use, the overall contribution is quite high. Of course, the impact on our emissions is really something serious and only growing. Very quick, some stats for you, because I come from the building and the energy space. So here's a very quick snapshot of the CO2 emissions that with concrete and with plywood. These are the traditional materials that we use. And if you take a look at a simple 100 square feet wall of construction, today the entire construction industry needs a shift in terms of how we can go green. And that's exactly where we are concentrating on. And if you see the VNext board, which is what we are into, it is hardly a fraction of the emissions that we have. So we are concentrating on building sustainability through buildings and infrastructure, and also through mobility. We'll just quickly share that with you. So I'm from Visakha Industries, as Mr. Puneet mentioned earlier. And we are quickly just running through. We have a product that replaces plywood and concrete to build homes. So one of the biggest markets that we have present now is in India, apart from Middle East and other developing countries. And through this initiative, we've managed to impact of about 90,000 tons of CO2 emissions simply by replacing the traditional products. We also make yarn out of recycled plastics. So up to today, we have about 100 million PET bottles that we've made clothing yarn for out of the plastic bottles that consume water from. And we are also into solar. So many of the speakers earlier have talked about solar as well. So very happy to share with you that we are the first guys in the world who have come up with a roof that actually generates power. Quite simply, a roof that will generate electricity for you. And we just got patented in India last week, and we are patent pending in the rest of the world. in countries like America and Germany. So this is kind of the impact that we are actually trying to look at. Quickly showing you the applications, because that is really where we feel we can create an impact. And then we have a VNext solutions as well, literally a one-stop solution to make people believe and feel and actually quantify how eco-friendly we are in today's world. So that's a very quick snapshot of what we can do. Coming to the whole green aspect, right? So you can have finishes like this in terms of the buildings that you can create, the construction activities that we take on today, and you don't have to sacrifice on anything. You can be green, save water, save the sand utility, and also have a green environment with your constructions. So this is something interesting that we did for affordable homes in Kenya. The complete home is topped off with a solar roof. So quite literally anywhere in the world, you can have a house self-powered with no impact on the environment. This house we made for $7,000. We are also actually in talks with Habitat for Humanity in Sacramento, where like our speaker before was talking about housing, there's a huge housing crisis there, and we are trying to give our solutions in terms of that. And this is a picture of our manufacturing facility. It's completely self-sustained. The roof itself manufactures the power to run the entire production. So, and this is another interesting image that we are working with the Indian innovator Sonam Wangchuk. The Indian fraternity may recognize him from the movie Three Idiots. So we are building homes for army camps in Ladakh with our solar roof, which are self-sustained. And that's a quick shot of charging stations, right? Going forward, the electric revolution, if it's not backed by solar, the entire initiative is going to be futile. So we can be used in roofs where the charging station can be completely self-powered. So this is a quick snapshot of how we are trying to contribute to what we are able to do. We are also working in the e-mobility space, where we just launched an electric vehicle that will be run completely on battery operated. So that's a quick shot from me. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a great experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vamsi, for all the useful comments there. We are extremely short of time. Before we close, I would quickly like to mention about the CEO forum that CII runs, which is called the CII Initiative for Cleaner Air, Better Life. It's an initiative to provide single touch point for Indian industry to design and contribute to high impact multi-stakeholder projects on air pollution along with government and communities. It further provides impetus to clean air, a dedicated forum for business leaders. India CEO Forum for Clean Air was set up by CII in 2009. The vision of the forum is to showcase proactive steps from industry leaders who are uniquely placed to catalyze clean air action across sectors. The forum currently comprises of 26 industry leaders to provide impetus to action on air pollution. I think we are extremely short of time. I would have loved to run through a few questions that we had. We are getting, but we are already overshot the time. So I think I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of CII to again thank all the panelists that could join us in their evening or morning hours from wherever they're joining. And again, thank CII to organize this very, very useful session. And I would like to wrap up with again a vote of thanks from CII. Thank you so much to all of you.